I always knew I was the family afterthought, but I never expected them to put it in writing. My name is Camila, and I'm 29 years old. For most of my life, I've been what my parents call the responsible one, which is family code for the one who gets screwed over because she can handle it. While my younger sister, Sophia, got birthday parties with pony rides and college tuition paid in full, I got a pat on the head and, "You'll figure it out, Camila. You always do." The thing is, I did figure it out. I built a thriving e-commerce business from my cramped studio apartment, working 18-hour days while Sophia posted Instagram stories from Cabo, but my parents never asked about my work, never celebrated my success. Why would they? I wasn't the golden child. That was Sophia's job. My life had always been a series of stark contrasts. Sophia, 2 years my junior, floated through existence on a cloud of parental indulgence. Her childhood bedroom, 2 doors down from mine in our modest 3-bedroom ranch in suburban Connecticut, was a shrine to her whims. A canopy bed, a walk-in closet overflowing with trendy clothes, an endless supply of art supplies she rarely touched. My room, on the other hand, was Spartan, functional. I chose the cheapest furniture, painted the walls a neutral cream, and spent my evenings hunched over textbooks, a calculator, or, later, my laptop, working. From the age of 16, while Sophia was perfecting her cheerleading routines or planning her next mall excursion with friends, I was bagging groceries at the local supermarket, then waiting tables at a greasy spoon diner. Every dollar earned was meticulously saved. My parents, Leo and Isabella Rossi, would praise my strong work ethic, but it always felt like a convenient excuse for them not to financially support my dreams. "You're so independent, Camila," Mom would coo, as she handed Sophia another crisp $50 bill for a concert ticket. "We admire that about you." It was a compliment that stung, a subtle reinforcement of my second-class status. My independence was not a choice they offered. It was a burden they imposed. I put myself through college at a state university, meticulously piecing together scholarships, student loans, and every penny from my part-time jobs. I majored in business administration with a focus on supply chain management, a field that appealed to my innate desire for order and efficiency. While Sophia studied social media marketing at a private liberal arts college they generously funded, attending parties and spending semesters abroad, I was living off ramen noodles, working graveyard shifts, and commuting an hour each way to campus. My graduation was a quiet affair, a small dinner with my parents, who seemed more interested in Sophia's latest boyfriend drama than in my hard-earned diploma. After college, I dived headfirst into the world of e-commerce. I started Global Glow, an online marketplace for artisanal, ethically sourced home goods. I saw a gap in the market. Consumers increasingly wanted unique, handmade items, but also demanded transparency about their origin and fair labor practices. I sourced everything myself, from hand-blown glass from a small studio in North Carolina to organic cotton throws woven by a cooperative in rural Georgia. My first year was brutal. I lived in a cramped, humid studio apartment in Brooklyn, sleeping on an air mattress, surrounded by boxes of inventory. My days blurred into 18-hour marathons of product photography, website design, customer service, and packing shipments. My evenings were spent poring over analytics, perfecting SEO, and teaching myself digital marketing. While Sophia was posting Instagram stories from exotic vacations funded by her parents, I was meticulously building my own empire, brick by painful brick, in the shadows. Global Glow slowly, painstakingly, began to take off. My commitment to quality, my transparent sourcing, and my obsessive focus on customer satisfaction paid off. Orders surged. Positive reviews poured in. I moved to a slightly larger apartment, hired a part-time assistant, and invested in better photography equipment. By my 29th birthday, Global Glow was generating a 7-figure annual revenue. I had built financial security, professional success, and a sense of profound personal accomplishment, all on my own terms. But my parents never asked about it, never celebrated it, never once acknowledged the monumental effort it had taken. To them, I was still just Camila, the one who handles things. Camila, honey, can you come over Sunday? Mom's voice crackled through my phone last week. We need to have a family meeting. I should have known something was up. Family meetings in the Rossi household only happened when my parents needed to announce another financial gift to Sophia or explain why I needed to be understanding about some new slight. A familiar knot of dread tightened in my stomach. I agreed, my voice flat, already bracing myself for the inevitable. I arrived at my childhood home on a crisp autumn afternoon, the scent of burning leaves mingling with Mom's ubiquitous potpourri. The house, a modest 3-bedroom ranch, looked tired, faded, like a worn photograph. It held a million memories, both sweet and bitter. Birthday parties where I felt invisible. Holiday dinners where Sophia's achievements overshadowed mine. Quiet evenings spent dreaming of a life beyond its walls. I pushed down the wave of melancholy and walked inside. Sophia and her new husband, Marcus Thorne, were already seated at the dining room table, sipping what looked like expensive sparkling cider. Sophia, 27, looked radiant, almost ethereal, in her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a cashmere sweater that must have cost more than my first month's rent. Her left hand, adorned with a dazzling engagement ring that screamed old money, intertwined with Marcus's. Marcus, a slick, self-proclaimed startup guru with a perfectly trimmed beard and an irritatingly confident smirk, had the air of someone who perpetually smelled success, usually his own. He was the kind of man who talked about synergy and disruption at family dinners, as if he were addressing a venture capitalist board meeting. My father, Leo, sat at the head of the table, an inscrutable expression on his face, his usually boisterous demeanor strangely subdued. My mother, Isabella, sat opposite him, wringing her hands, her eyes darting nervously between us, avoiding my gaze. The air was thick with unspoken tension, a familiar precursor to bad news. Always bad news, for me. Dad cleared his throat, taking a slow, deliberate sip of water from a glass that clinked slightly against his teeth. The silence stretched, amplifying the soft rustle of Sophia's sweater and the faint whir of the refrigerator. Camila, he began, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. Your mother and I have made a decision. He paused again, looking from Sophia to Marcus, a hint of pride in his eyes. Then, finally, fleetingly, his gaze rested on me, but it held no warmth, no connection, just a fleeting recognition. We've decided to sell the house. My heart sank, a heavy stone dropping into a cold well. The house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was the last tangible link to a childhood that, despite its many disappointments, still held moments of warmth and belonging. It was the only place I still felt like I had a physical connection to my family, however tenuous. But why? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile remnants of my composure. And where will you go? Mom interjected, her voice fluttering, nervously smoothing the tablecloth. Well, your father's retirement account is less robust than we hoped. And Sophia and Marcus are planning a family. They need a down payment for a larger home, something with a nursery, a yard for future children. She gestured vaguely towards Sophia's now beaming face. Then came the dagger, straight to the heart, plunged in with chilling precision. We're giving all the proceeds from the sale to Sophia, Dad announced, his voice still flat, devoid of emotion, as if he were reading from a grocery list. She needs it more. And you're so independent, Camila. You always land on your feet. I stared at them, numb. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. They were selling the family home, my childhood home, the place where I had spent every formative year of my life, and giving every single cent to my sister, the one who had never worked a day in her life until marrying into Marcus's money. My mind reeled, trying to grasp the enormity of the betrayal. This wasn't just about money. It was about a lifetime of being overlooked, of being deemed less worthy, less loved. It was a clear, undeniable statement. You are not as important as your sister. We decided it was the best way to ensure the family's future stability. Mom added, her voice gaining a forced brightness, as if stability was something only Sophia deserved, only Sophia was capable of achieving. Sophia, meanwhile, sat beaming, her hand intertwined with Marcus's, seemingly oblivious to the seismic shockwaves she was creating in my life. Or perhaps simply uncaring. Marcus nodded sagely, his lips curving into a self-satisfied smile. A shrewd financial move, Mr. and Mrs. Rossi. Securing generational wealth for Sophia's future family. Very wise. His words, meant to be complimentary, felt like a deliberate taunt, a celebration of my erasure. My vision blurred, tears stinging my eyes, hot and sharp. I fought them back, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. The silence that followed was deafening, filled only with the sound of my shattered illusions, the crumbling foundations of a childhood I had always tried to romanticize. I felt a cold dread creep into my veins, twisting my gut. This wasn't just a slight. It was an act of profound, calculated erasure. They were systematically dismantling any claim I had to belonging, to being a true member of the family. The betrayal was so deep, so absolute, it hollowed me out, leaving a raw, empty cavity where my hopes for familial acceptance used to reside. I stood up, pushing back my chair with a jarring scrape that echoed loudly in the stunned silence. I can't believe this, I whispered, my voice raw with unshed tears, trembling with suppressed fury. You're just giving it all away? To her? It's family, Camila, Dad said, his voice hardening, dismissing my pain, as if I were being unreasonable, as if my reaction was unwarranted. Sophia needs a stable foundation for her new life. You're strong. You don't need us. Don't need you? I scoffed, a bitter, strangled laugh escaping my lips. The words tasted like ash. I put myself through college. I paid my own way. I built my own business from nothing, with no help from anyone. And what did I get? Scraps. Always scraps. And now you're taking away the last place I ever called home and giving it to the one who never had to lift a finger for anything? My voice rose, cracking with the weight of years of unspoken grievances. Sophia, sensing the shift in my tone from heartbroken to outright furious, finally chimed in, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, a condescending coo that grated on my nerves. Camila, don't be so dramatic. It's just a house. And Mom and Dad are just trying to help me build a life. You know how hard it is for us, with Marcus's startup just getting off the ground. Marcus actually chuckled. A low, guttural, utterly contemptuous sound that solidified my hatred for him. Yes, the burden of potential future millions can be quite taxing. I walked out of that house, leaving them to their celebration of my abandonment, and didn't look back. The front door slammed shut behind me with a finality that felt like a period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. The drive home to Brooklyn was a blur of tears and simmering rage. The autumn trees, usually a riot of vibrant color, seemed muted, somber, mirroring the landscape of my soul. My phone buzzed. It was Sophia. Camila, don't be mad. It's for the best. We can still be family. I blocked her number. Then, I blocked my parents. I cut them off completely. Not out of anger alone, but out of a desperate, primal need to breathe, to find oxygen away from the suffocating weight of their emotional neglect. I needed to protect what little was left of myself. Over the next few weeks, I descended into a dark place. The betrayal had left a gaping wound in my soul, a chasm of hurt and disillusionment. My usually meticulous work ethic vanished. I neglected my e-commerce business, Global Glow. The hundreds of customer emails piled up. The marketing campaigns lay dormant. My meticulously planned content calendar became a blank slate. My apartment, once my sanctuary, now felt like a lonely cave, its walls closing in on me. I ordered takeout every night, ate it listlessly, and then stared at the ceiling for hours, the echoes of my parents' words rattling around in my head. You're strong. You don't need us. My closest friends, Liam, a fiercely loyal tech developer who handled Global Glow's backend, and Chloe, a pragmatic marketing genius who managed my social media presence, tried to reach out. They called, they texted, they even showed up at my door with food and concerned eyes. "Camila, you okay?" "You've been quiet," Liam asked, his voice laced with genuine worry during one of my brief, monosyllabic phone conversations. "Everything all right with the family?" Chloe, ever direct, simply texted, "Need wine and a rant?" But I pushed them away. I was hurting. Deeply, profoundly, and I didn't know how to articulate the profound generational wound that had just been torn open. I was ashamed, humiliated, and utterly broken. One dreary evening, a typical Brooklyn drizzle turning the city into a watercolor blur, I was staring blankly at my laptop screen, trying to force myself to respond to a backlog of customer inquiries. My cursor hovered uselessly over an email. I couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying the scene at the dining room table, the smug looks, the dismissive words. Suddenly, an email notification popped up, almost a phantom of my past. New listing alert. 123 Maple Street. Your old home. It was a real estate alert I had set up years ago. A silly, sentimental habit I had forgotten about. A lingering hope that perhaps one day I might be able to afford to buy my childhood home back. As a nostalgic gesture, a cold, hard idea, born of pain and desperation, began to form in my mind, shimmering with a dark, tantalizing allure. What if? What if I bought it? Not to live in, not for sentimentality, but to control, to reclaim, to demonstrate, irrevocably, my own power and independence. To make them feel, for once, what it felt like to be completely dispossessed, utterly vulnerable. I slammed my laptop shut, the sound echoing in the silent apartment. This was insane. It was vindictive, spiteful, probably financially irresponsible. But the idea, once planted, began to grow, taking root in the fertile ground of my simmering rage. It sprouted, unfurled, and began to dominate my thoughts, pushing aside the despair. Global Glow was doing incredibly well. My products, sourced from independent artisans and promoted through clever social media campaigns, had found a passionate audience. I had built a substantial nest egg, entirely through my own relentless work and shrewd business decisions. Enough, perhaps, to buy that house. Not just a down payment, but the entire thing. Cash. The thought sent a thrill, cold and sharp, through me. The next morning, the sun seemed to shine a little brighter. I called my real estate agent, an old family friend named Mr. Henderson, a kind, gentle man in his late 60s who had sold my parents their first home decades ago. He had no idea about the family drama, thank goodness. "Mr. Evicted. Henderson," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, betraying none of the turmoil churning within me. "I'm interested in putting an offer on 123 Maple Street." He sounded surprised, a slight chuckle in his voice. "That's a lovely home, Camila, but I thought your parents were selling it?" "They are," I said, trying to keep my voice even, betraying nothing. "But I'm interested in buying it, and I'd like to do so anonymously. Please ensure my name doesn't appear anywhere until the sale is finalized. I have my reasons." Mr. Henderson, ever discreet, simply replied, "Understood. Consider it done. Your privacy is paramount." His professionalism was a welcome balm to my wounded soul. Over the next few weeks, I navigated the complicated dance of real estate with a steely resolve that surprised even myself. I hired a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Brenda Jenkins, who specialized in high-stakes, discrete property transactions. She understood the nuances of anonymous purchases and the importance of absolute confidentiality. The price of the house was within my means, well within my means, thanks to the years of silent, unacknowledged hard work I had put into Global Glow. Every penny I had earned, every late night, every sacrifice, was now being channeled into this singular, audacious act of defiance. I obtained a pre-approval for the mortgage, though I was planning to pay cash, and signed the initial offer, using a shell corporation registered under a series of anonymous LLCs. And then, I waited. a coiled spring of anticipation and righteous fury. Meanwhile, my parents continued their charade, oblivious to the storm gathering on their horizon. Sophia, emboldened by the prospect of a free down payment for a sprawling suburban mansion, began posting endless Instagram stories about her dream home search, tagging interior designers, and showing off mood boards for nurseries. She sent me a follow-up text, a brightly optimistic message. Can't wait to find our perfect family home. So excited for this new chapter. My parents, freed from the burden of their modest home, started planning their retirement adventure. A cross-country RV trip they had always dreamed of but never saved for, their savings now redirected to Sophia's extravagant whims. They called me twice, leaving voicemail messages brimming with superficial cheerfulness, urging me to move on and be happy for Sophia. I never returned their calls. The silence was my shield, my weapon, and my solace. It was the only way I could maintain my resolve. The offer was accepted. The escrow process began. Every document I signed, every hurdle I cleared, felt like a silent victory, a reclaiming of something that had been so cruelly taken from me. The anonymous LLC, the careful layering of legal entities, ensured that even Mr. Henderson didn't know the full story, only that his client wanted complete discretion. I kept my secret close, sharing it only with Liam and Chloe, who listened with a mix of shock and awe, their expressions alternating between worried glances and suppressed grins. Camila, Chloe said, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. This is epic. Truly epic. A mic drop for the ages. Liam simply grinned, a wicked glint in his eye. She finally snapped. And it's glorious. This is going to be legendary. Their support, their validation, helped steel my resolve. 2 days before closing, my parents called again, Mom's voice filled with a forced brightness that grated on my raw nerves. Camila, dear, we found the perfect buyers. A lovely young couple, first-time homeowners, just starting their family. It closes on Friday. We're so excited. We're celebrating tonight. My heart, hardened by months of betrayal, felt a perverse satisfaction. They had no idea who the lovely young couple really was. The illusion of their control, their power, their carefully constructed future, was about to shatter into a million pieces. The closing day arrived. I sat in Brenda Jenkins' sleek, minimalist office in downtown Manhattan, the city skyline a concrete symphony outside her window. I wore a crisp, tailored suit, a silent armor. My hands, usually prone to trembling when nervous, were steady as I signed the final papers. The weight of the house, of my family's history, of my own quiet rebellion, settling, tangible and heavy, in my hands. The keys to 123 Maple Street, my childhood home, were now mine. I was the secret buyer. The circle was complete. That evening, as the city lights began to twinkle against the inky sky, I drafted the email. It was formal, legal, and utterly devoid of emotion, a cold, clinical instrument of justice. I attached an official eviction notice addressed to my parents and Sophia, instructing them to vacate the premises within 30 days. My name, as the new owner, was clearly printed at the bottom of the document. Brenda's paralegal hand-delivered it to the house, ensuring there was no immediate confrontation, just the cold shock of undeniable fact. The storm broke almost immediately. My phone, which had been blissfully silent for months, began to ring off the hook, a relentless, furious chorus. First, a frantic, hysterical call from Mom. Then, a furious, booming call from Dad. Then, a shrill, outraged shriek from Sophia. Then, a calculated, condescending threat from Marcus. Then various extended family members I hadn't heard from in years, their voices laced with judgment and disbelief. I let every single call go to voicemail. I needed to hear their shock, their outrage, their disbelief, their unbridled fury before I faced them. I needed to let their initial wave of self-pity and anger wash over me from a distance. Mom's voicemail was a choked sob, barely coherent. Camila, what have you done? You bought the house? Why would you do this to us? Your own family. We're homeless. Sophia is devastated. Dad's message was colder, laced with ice-cold fury. Camila, this is unacceptable. This is vindictive. This is a betrayal. You think this is funny? What about your sister's down payment? She needs that money. We all trusted you. You're ruining everything. Sophia's message was pure, unadulterated rage, her voice cracking with fury. You evil B-word, how could you? This was our money. You're going to ruin everything. You're not my sister. You're a monster. Marcus's message was a calculated, condescending threat, his usual bravado curdling into desperate annoyance. Camila, this is a terrible business decision. You're going to alienate your entire family. You need to reconsider immediately, or you'll regret it. The chorus of outrage continued for 2 days, a relentless barrage of calls, texts, and increasingly desperate voicemails. I listened to every single message, a grim satisfaction growing within me. They were finally seeing me, finally acknowledging my existence, but only because I had disrupted their carefully constructed narrative of my insignificance. When I had been quietly, diligently building my business, taking care of myself, achieving monumental success, they had ignored me, dismissed my accomplishments as mere independence. Now that I had exercised my power, used my hard-won resources, they were forced to confront the undeniable reality of my strength, and they hated it. On the 3rd day, a timid, tentative knock echoed through my apartment building. I looked through the peephole. It was Mom and Dad, their faces etched with exhaustion and confusion, their eyes puffy and red. They looked different, smaller, without the shield of their house, without the comfort of their carefully constructed roles. The air of entitlement that usually clung to them had evaporated, replaced by a desperate vulnerability. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and opened the door. Camila, Mom began, her voice hoarse, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and bewilderment. We need to talk. Why did you do this? How could you? Why? I repeated, a bitter, humorless laugh escaping my lips. My voice was calm, too calm, betraying nothing of the churning storm inside me. You really have to ask? You sold my childhood home, the only place I ever felt connected to this family, and gave all the proceeds to Sophia, who has never lifted a finger for anything in her life. You constantly belittled my efforts, ignored my successes, and treated me like an ATM. You think this just happened out of nowhere? You think this is unprovoked? Dad stepped forward, his eyes narrowed, his usual commanding presence diminished by the circumstances. This is about Sophia's down payment, isn't it? This is about jealousy. You're jealous of your sister. Jealousy? I scoffed, the word tasting like bile. I'm not jealous of Sophia. I built my own multi-million-dollar business from scratch. I don't need handouts. I don't need a free house. What I needed was to be seen, to be valued, to be treated like a daughter, not a disposable resource you could exploit for your golden child. What I needed was love, not just convenient independence. We gave Sophia the money because she needed it, Mom pleaded, wringing her hands, her voice taking on that familiar, self-pitying whine. You always said you were fine, Camila. You always handled everything. And how convenient that was for you. I shot back. The years of suppressed anger, the lifetime of being overlooked, finally bubbling to the surface, sharp and scalding. I said I was fine because you never bothered to ask if I wasn't fine. You never looked beneath the surface. You only ever saw me as the strong one, the one who could take care of herself. So you didn't have to bother. You didn't have to support me. You didn't have to give me a piece of yourselves because I was independent. The conversation devolved into a painful, messy argument, years of unspoken resentments and buried hurts finally spilling out into the open like an overflowing dam. They accused me of being vindictive, selfish, ungrateful, cold-hearted. They rehashed every perceived slight, every financial contribution they had supposedly made, usually when I was already self-sufficient, every instance where I hadn't conformed to their expectations of the grateful, independent daughter. I, in turn, accused them of favoritism, emotional neglect, and treating me like a second-class citizen in my own family, a utility rather than a beloved child. By the end of the evening, nothing was resolved. They left, defeated, their shoulders slumped, their faces drawn. I was left alone in my apartment, drained but strangely lighter, as if a great, festering wound had finally been lanced. The eviction deadline loomed. The silence from Sophia and Marcus was the most telling. The golden child, accustomed to everything being handed to her, was finally facing real consequences. Their dream home plans were shattered, their financial stability revealed as a house of cards built on my parents' misguided generosity. They had nowhere to go, no immediate savings, no real job prospects for Marcus, beyond vague startup opportunities. My parents, who had boasted about their RV adventure, suddenly found themselves with no home, dwindling savings after giving everything away, and the terrifying prospect of being truly homeless. A week before the deadline, Mom called again, her voice thin, fragile, laced with a desperation I had never heard before. "Camila, please, we have nowhere to go." Sophia and Marcus are furious, but they're struggling too. They're saying terrible things about you to the whole family. "Can't you just let us stay? We'll pay rent." "We'll do anything." "Rent?" I asked, a cynical laugh escaping me, cold and hollow. "You gave away hundreds of thousands of dollars to Sophia, and now you want to pay rent to stay in my house? This is exactly why I did this, to show you what it feels like to be vulnerable, to be without a safety net, to have to rely on someone else's generosity, just like you made me feel my entire life." The words were harsh, but necessary. They needed to fully grasp the gravity of their actions. Dad got on the phone, his voice hoarse, stripped of its usual authority. "Camila, this is beyond cruel. We are your parents. We raised you. We gave you life." "And I raised myself," I countered, my voice hardening, unwavering, "while you were busy raising Sophia's bank account and validating her every whim. This house is my property now, and you will vacate it by the deadline unless something fundamental changes." I hung up, my hand shaking slightly as I pressed the end call button. The decision was agonizing, but I held firm. They needed to feel the full weight of their choices, the crushing burden of the consequences they had so carelessly inflicted upon me. 3 days before the eviction deadline, I drove to the house. The sight of it, knowing it was legally mine, filled me with a strange mix of vindication and profound sadness. Sophia and Marcus were there, grim-faced, packing boxes into a battered U-Haul truck that looked far too small for their belongings. Sophia looked thin, her usual sparkle replaced by a dull resentment, her designer clothes now rumpled and stained. Marcus, for once, was silent, his usual arrogance deflated, his eyes hollow. My parents were moving slowly, clearly overwhelmed, their retirement plans in tatters, their faces a roadmap of despair. The house was half empty, echoing with the ghosts of a past that could never be reclaimed. "Camila," Sophia said, her voice surprisingly subdued, almost meek, devoid of its usual entitlement. "You can't actually go through with this. Where are Mom and Dad supposed to go? They have nothing." "That," I replied, my voice steady, my gaze sweeping over my parents' defeated figures, "is a question you should have asked yourselves when you willingly took their home and their life savings, leaving them with nothing but the clothes on their backs, and the misguided belief that I would always be there to clean up your messes." "We didn't know it would be like this," Mom cried, her voice cracking, tears streaming down her face, not of self-pity, but of genuine, raw despair. "We just wanted Sophia to be secure. We just wanted to help." "And what about my security?" I asked, my own voice trembling slightly, but holding firm. "What about the years I struggled? The years I built something from nothing, while you lavished everything on her? Did you ever once ask if I was secure? Or did you just assume I'd always be there to pick up the pieces? Did you ever consider that your choices had consequences for me too?" The truth was, seeing them so broken, so lost, did twist something inside me. The anger, though still present, was now mixed with a profound sadness. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about forging a path forward. A path where my worth was recognized, where boundaries were respected, and where family meant genuine support, not constant exploitation. It was about healing, not just hurting. I took a deep breath, the cold autumn air filling my lungs, clearing my mind. "I'm not here to gloat," I said, my voice gaining strength, echoing slightly in the hollowed-out living room. "I'm here to offer a choice. You can leave, and I will sell this house, and you will have no safety net, no home, or we can try to fix this. But it has to be different this time. Fundamentally different." Sophia scoffed, a last flicker of her old defiance. "Fix what? You just evicted us! You ruined our lives!" "Fix the broken dynamic," I countered, looking directly at my parents, then at Sophia and Marcus. "Fix the years of neglect. Fix the idea that I'm just here to clean up your messes, that my accomplishments are insignificant, and that my needs are secondary. If you want to stay, if you want a roof over your heads, then you need to acknowledge what you did, and you need to acknowledge my worth, not just what I can give you. You need to apologize, truly apologize, for how you've treated me, not just for the inconvenience you're facing now. And you need to commit to building a real family, one based on mutual respect and genuine love, not on favoritism and exploitation." Dad looked at Mom, a long, silent exchange passing between them. Then, he turned back to me, a flicker of something new in his eyes. Not anger, not denial, not even just grudging understanding, but a profound, weary acceptance. "What do you want, Camila?" he asked, his voice low, stripped of its former authority. "What do you need from us?" "I want respect," I said simply, the words echoing in the half-empty room. "I want you to see me, truly see me, for who I am and what I've accomplished. I want an apology, a genuine one, not just for selling the house, but for how you've treated me my entire life. And I want a commitment that things will be different from now on. If you can give me that, then I will allow you to stay here in my house for as long as you need to get back on your feet. No rent, no strings attached. Just a chance to rebuild, honestly, respectfully, as a real family." Sophia, surprisingly, was the first to speak, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes downcast. "Camila, I'm sorry. I was so caught up in Marcus and our plans, so focused on what I thought I needed, I didn't see how selfish I was. I never thought about how this would affect you. I took you for granted. I'm truly sorry." Marcus, still silent, finally nodded slowly, a rare moment of genuine humility from him. The arrogance had been replaced by a quiet shame. My parents, their faces etched with a combination of shame and dawning realization, looked at each other, tears welling in their eyes. Then, Mom stepped forward, her body trembling slightly, her eyes filled with tears, not of self-pity, but of genuine heart-wrenching remorse. "Oh, Camila," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, reaching out a tentative hand. "I'm so sorry. For everything. For not seeing you, for not supporting you, for letting your father, for letting us take advantage of your strength. You deserved so much more. You were right. We were so wrong." Dad, his voice gruff, but his eyes surprisingly soft, filled with a regret that seemed to emanate from his very core, added, "We were wrong, Camila. We chose the easy path, the path of least resistance. We took you for granted, always expecting you to be the strong one, the one who didn't need us. And you were right to make us see that. We're proud of you, honey. So proud of what you've built. We didn't know how to show it. We messed up." The apologies weren't perfect. They were messy, imperfect, and tinged with years of unspoken baggage and ingrained habits. But they felt real. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, truly heard, by the people who were supposed to be my protectors, my champions. The weight of years of resentment, though not entirely gone, began to lift. Over the next few months, the dynamic slowly, painstakingly began to shift. My parents stayed in the house, living with me. They were initially quiet, almost afraid to breathe too loudly, as if any misstep would lead to my wrath. But I didn't want them to live in fear. I wanted genuine connection, a fragile seed of love to finally take root. We started having dinner together. I cooked most nights, and they insisted on washing dishes, a small but significant act of service they had rarely offered before. Small conversations about my day, about their struggles finding new work, about Sophia's attempts to rebuild her life, began to flow more naturally. I shared stories about Global Glow, and to my astonishment, they actually listened, asking questions, expressing genuine interest, no longer dismissing it as a hobby. Sophia and Marcus, humbled by their financial setbacks, started working entry-level jobs, slowly rebuilding their lives without the safety net of my parents' misguided generosity. Sophia called me regularly, not for money, but to talk, to genuinely connect. She even asked for business advice, a request that would have been unthinkable a year ago. The relationship was still fragile, but it was being rebuilt, brick by painful brick, on a foundation of honesty and respect, not on the old toxic patterns of entitlement and neglect. My parents began to actively support me in ways they never had before. My mother, who had once been solely focused on Sophia's needs, now helped pack orders for Global Glow, meticulously taping boxes and labeling shipments, taking genuine pride in my success. My father, who had once dismissed my business as a hobby and my achievements as mere independence, now proudly told his friends about my multi-million-dollar e-commerce company, a newfound sparkle of admiration in his eyes. They learned to knock before entering my office, to ask before assuming, to listen before speaking, to apologize when they stumbled. The silence that had once defined our relationship was slowly replaced by the tentative sounds of genuine conversation, of shared laughter, of a family trying, however imperfectly, to heal. One evening, my mother sat next to me on the couch, watching me work on my laptop, the warm glow of the screen illuminating her face. "Camila," she said softly, her voice filled with a quiet reverence, "thank you for giving us a second chance, for bringing us home, truly home." I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not the enabler, not the perpetrator of past hurts, but a woman finally confronting her mistakes, desperate to make amends, desperate for connection. "It's not just about the house, Mom," I said, taking her hand, my fingers intertwining with hers. "It's about rebuilding our family. This time on terms that actually make us feel like one. Terms based on respect and love, not just expectation." The transformation wasn't instantaneous, nor was it without its setbacks. There were moments of frustration, relapses into old patterns, and difficult conversations that reopened old wounds. But this time, we faced them together. This time, I had a voice that was heard. This time, I had boundaries that were respected. And this time, they listened. They truly listened. A year later, the house, my house, felt like a true home again. My parents had found new purpose, volunteering at a local community center, rebuilding their own lives with newfound humility and gratitude. Sophia and Marcus had bought a small condo, their financial independence hard-earned and appreciated. Our family gatherings were no longer tense, performative affairs, but relaxed, genuine interactions, filled with real laughter and mutual respect. I had learned that family isn't about blood alone. It's about who shows up for you, who sees your worth, and who helps you become the person you were always meant to be. Sometimes, the path to true connection involves the most painful of detours, and the most profound act of self-love is simply walking away from those who cannot see your worth beyond what you can give them. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took advantage of your generosity? How did you navigate that challenging path and reclaim your own worth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt dismissed or unappreciated by those closest to you, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more real-life experiences about finding your voice and standing up for yourself, and share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being and happiness. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, true family supports your growth rather than exploits your goodness.